It was a crisp autumn evening when I first realized my dream home in Willow Creek Estates was about to become the stage for a showdown I'd never forget. I'm Lucas Bennett, a 38-year-old veterinarian with a knack for handling animals and a deep love for wide-open spaces. After years of saving, I'd finally purchased a 5-acre plot just beyond the HOA's iron grip, a slice of paradise where I could build my home and keep my animals, including my pride and joy, Brutus, a 2,000-pound Charolais bull I'd raised from a calf. The property came with a small catch, a shared fence line with the HOA's community park, a detail I'd meticulously reviewed in the deed. My father, a retired surveyor, always told me, "Lucas, never trust a boundary line unless you've walked it yourself." Those words would soon become my lifeline. The trouble started when I returned home from a long day at the clinic to find my sturdy wooden fence, built to keep Brutus safely contained, sliced clean through. Not just a small gap, but a gaping 10-foot section, with splintered boards scattered like confetti. Beyond the wreckage, I saw the HOA's community park transformed into a full-blown party scene. String lights, a blaring speaker, and dozens of people laughing and dancing. At the center of it all was Marjorie Caldwell, the HOA president, a woman in her mid-40s with a perm so tight it seemed to squeeze the warmth out of her smile. She was holding court, gesturing grandly as if she owned not just the park, but my land too. I took a deep breath, my boots crunching over the broken fence as I approached. The air smelled of barbecue and cheap wine, and the crowd barely noticed me until I reached Marjorie. "Excuse me, Ms. Caldwell," I said, keeping my voice steady, "but that's my fence you've destroyed, and this party's spilling onto my property." Her head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing behind oversized glasses that screamed, "I'm in charge." "Oh, Mr. Bennett," she replied, her voice syrupy but sharp, like a knife dipped in honey. "This is a community event approved by the HOA board. We needed extra space, and your fence was inconvenient. We'll replace it, of course, once the festivities are over." I pulled out my phone where I'd saved a digital copy of my property survey. "My deed clearly states this land is mine, and that fence is on my property line. You had no right to touch it." Marjorie's smile didn't budge, but her eyes flicked to the crowd, ensuring they were listening. "Well, dear, the HOA bylaws allow us to make temporary adjustments for community benefit. You wouldn't want to be the neighbor who ruins everyone's fun, would you?" The crowd murmured, some shooting me dirty looks as if I were the one crashing their party. I felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't just about a fence. It was about control, and Marjorie was playing queen of a kingdom she thought extended to my backyard. What she didn't know was that my backyard came with a very large, very particular resident. Brutus wasn't just any bull. He was trained, docile with me, but fiercely territorial when strangers crossed his turf. And right now, Marjorie's party was inches from his pasture. I decided to play it cool. "All right, Ms. Caldwell," I said, forcing a smile. "Enjoy your party. We'll talk about the fence tomorrow." Her smirk told me she thought she'd won. As I walked back to my house, I noticed something odd. The gate to Brutus's pasture was unlatched, likely bumped open by one of Marjorie's partygoers stumbling through the broken fence. I secured it, but an idea was forming. If Marjorie wanted to play dirty, I'd let nature teach her a lesson. The next morning I woke to an email from Marjorie. "Dear Mr. Bennett," it began, "thank you for your understanding regarding our community event. The HOA will repair your fence within 30 days per our bylaws. In the meantime, please refrain from interfering with community activities." 30 days? I laughed out loud. My animals didn't have 30 days to wait for a secure boundary, and I wasn't about to let Marjorie dictate terms on my land. I called my friend Tom, a local contractor who'd worked on projects in Willow Creek. "Lucas," he said, chuckling, "that party last night? Marjorie's been planning it for weeks. She told everyone your land was unused and perfect for overflow parking. She even bragged about cutting the fence herself to open up the space." My blood boiled, but Tom's next words lit a spark. "You know, she's been pulling stunts like this for years. Last summer, she fined a guy for planting roses. Because they weren't HOA approved, she's got the board wrapped around her finger. I spent the afternoon at the county records office, digging into Willow Creek's HOA bylaws and my property deed. My father's advice echoed in my head as I pored over every line. The deed was ironclad. My property was outside HOA jurisdiction, and the shared fence was entirely my responsibility. More importantly, I found a clause in the HOA's original charter requiring any alteration to adjacent private property to be approved by the owner in writing. Marjorie had none of that. Her community event was a clear violation. That evening I drove past the park. The party was over, but the damage wasn't. Trash littered my land. Empty cups, paper plates, even a broken folding chair. I took photos documenting every detail. Then I noticed something worse. Tire tracks on my property, where someone had clearly driven through the gap in the fence. Brutus was pacing nearby, his massive head lowered, snorting softly. He didn't like strangers. And I didn't like the idea of Marjorie's guests treating my land like their personal playground. I met with Sarah, a paralegal friend, at a diner the next day. Over coffee, I showed her the photos and documents. "Lucas, this is open and shut," she said, tapping the deed. "Marjorie's acting like your land is HOA property, but she has no legal standing. You could sue for trespassing and property damage, but you'll need more evidence of intent." Intent. That word stuck with me. Marjorie wasn't just careless, she was deliberate, and I needed to prove it. The following morning, I got a call from my neighbor, Ellen, a retired teacher, who'd lived in Willow Creek for decades. "Lucas, I overheard Marjorie at the community center," she whispered. "She's planning another event next weekend, same spot, and she's telling everyone your land is fair game since you didn't complain enough last time." Ellen paused, then added, "She also mentioned something about teaching you a lesson if you push back. Be careful." Careful wasn't my style anymore. I thanked Ellen and headed to my property, where I installed a small trail camera near the broken fence hidden in a tree. If Marjorie was planning round 2, I'd have proof. That afternoon, I checked on Brutus, who was grazing peacefully. I scratched his massive head, his warm breath puffing against my hand. "Don't worry, big guy," I murmured. "We're going to fix this." By Friday, the camera had caught something. Marjorie herself, inspecting the fence line with a man in a suit, likely her lawyer judging by his briefcase and nervous glances. She pointed at my property, gesturing animatedly, and I could almost hear her smug tone through the silent footage. The man nodded, jotting notes, and they left. I downloaded the video, my heart pounding. This was the intent Sarah was talking. About that evening, I got another email from Marjorie, this one more aggressive. "Mr. Bennett, it's come to our attention that you've been spreading false information about HOA property rights. Cease immediately, or we'll pursue legal action for defamation." Defamation? I almost laughed. She was trying to scare me into silence, but she'd picked the wrong guy. I forwarded the email to Sarah, who replied, "She's bluffing, keep gathering evidence." The next morning I visited the local historical society, curious about the land's history. The librarian, a kind woman named Clara, pulled out old maps and records. "Your property was once part of a cattle ranch," she said. "That's why it's zoned differently from the HOA's land. They can't touch it without your consent." She handed me a document showing the original boundary lines, which matched my deed perfectly. Another piece of the puzzle. By Sunday, the HOA's next event was in full swing. I watched from my porch as cars parked along the road, music blaring from the park. Marjorie had gone bigger this time. A bounce house, food trucks, even a small stage. And sure enough, people were spilling onto my land again, some even setting up picnic blankets near Brutus's pasture. I grabbed my phone, recorded the chaos, and noticed the gate to Brutus's pasture was unlatched again. This time I didn't close it right away. Instead, I called Sarah. "I've got an idea," I said. "It's risky, but it might just work." Sarah met me at my property an hour later, her laptop open to the HOA bylaws. "If you're thinking what I think you're thinking," she said, eyeing Brutus, "you need to be careful. You're within your rights to protect your property, but you can't endanger anyone." I nodded. My plan wasn't to hurt anyone, just to make a point Marjorie couldn't ignore. I walked to the party, where Marjorie was handing out flyers. for her community expansion initiative, which suspiciously included a map with my land labeled as Future Park Space. I approached her, holding up my deed. "Ms. Caldwell, this is the second time you've trespassed on my property. I'm giving you one chance to clear everyone out before I take action." Her smile was pure venom. "Mr. Bennett, you're being unreasonable. This is for the community. If you don't cooperate, we'll just vote to annex your land at the next board meeting." That was it. I walked back to my property, heart racing but resolve firm. I checked the trail camera footage again, confirming Marjorie's guests were still trampling my land. Then I opened Brutus's gate just enough to let him wander toward the broken fence. He knew his territory, and I knew he'd stay close. Bulls, like Brutus, don't charge unless provoked, but their presence alone is enough to make anyone rethink their choices. Within minutes, a scream pierced the air. Brutus had lumbered through the gap, his massive frame casting a shadow over the picnic blankets. Partygoers scrambled, dropping their plates and running back to the park. Marjorie's face went white as she saw Brutus, his horns glinting in the sunlight. "What is that thing doing here?" she shrieked, pointing at me. "You're endangering everyone." I crossed my arms, standing firm. "He's on my property, Ms. Caldwell. You're the one who cut my fence. Maybe you should have thought twice before inviting yourself over." The crowd was in chaos, some laughing, others filming on their phones. Brutus, calm as ever, snorted and pawed the ground, staying well within my property line. Marjorie tried to rally her supporters, shouting about lawsuits and animal control, but the damage was done. Her perfect party was a disaster, and the videos spreading online were titled things like "HOA Karen gets owned by giant bull." I gently guided Brutus back to his pasture, locking the gate securely this time. As I turned, I saw Ellen in the crowd, giving me a discreet thumbs up. That evening, I uploaded the trail camera footage and my recordings to a local community forum, along with a detailed post explaining Marjorie's illegal actions. The response was immediate. Neighbors shared their own stories of her overreach, from outrageous fines to bullying tactics. By morning, the post had thousands of views, and a local news outlet picked up the story. Marjorie's reign was starting to crumble, but I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. I spent the next day reinforcing my fence with temporary panels, but the real work was happening behind the scenes. Sarah helped me draft a formal complaint to the county, citing trespassing, property damage, and violations of HOA bylaws. We included the trail camera footage, the deed, and Clara's historical records. But the ace up my sleeve was still to come, something Marjorie had no idea I'd discovered about her so-called authority. As I sat in my home office, the sunset casting long shadows across my desk, I felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. This wasn't just about a fence or a party. It was about standing up to someone who thought they could bully their way to control. My father's words echoed again. "Walk the line, Lucas." I was walking it, and I was ready to see where it led. The morning after Brutus's grand appearance, Willow Creek was buzzing. My post on the community forum had gone viral locally, with neighbors sharing screenshots and adding their own tales of Marjorie's tyranny. My inbox was flooded with messages, some from residents thanking me for standing up, others from Marjorie's loyalists accusing me of endangering the community with my wild animal. But the real game changer came when I opened an email from an anonymous sender, someone claiming to be an HOA board member. "Check the 1998 amendment to the HOA charter," it read. "Marjorie's been hiding something big. Meet me at Riverside Park, 3 p.m. My pulse quickened. This was the break I'd been waiting for. I'm Lucas Bennett, a veterinarian who'd moved to Willow Creek Estates for peace, only to find myself in a war with Marjorie Caldwell, the HOA president who thought my land was her personal playground. After she cut my fence for her unauthorized party, I'd let my trained bull Brutus make a point. Now, with the community divided and Marjorie doubling down, I was ready to dig deeper. My father's advice, "Walk the line yourself," kept me grounded as I prepared for the meeting. At Riverside Park, under the shade of a sprawling willow tree, I met a nervous man in his late 50s, glasses fogged with sweat. He introduced himself as Harold, a long-time board member who'd grown tired of Marjorie's reign. "I've been on the board since '95, he said, glancing over his shoulder. "Marjorie's been forging documents to keep control. That 1998 amendment, it limits the HOA president's term to 3 years max. She's been in power for 9, claiming the amendment was rescinded in a closed meeting. No one's seen the paperwork." He slid a folder across the picnic table, containing a faded copy of the original amendment, signed and notarized. This was dynamite. If Marjorie was violating term limits, every decision she'd made since 2016 could be challenged, including her community expansion scheme that targeted my land. I thanked Harold, who hurried off, muttering about not wanting to be seen. Back home, I cross-referenced the amendment with county records, finding no trace of any rescission. Marjorie had been ruling like a monarch, banking on no one checking the fine print. My father's words echoed again. They hide the daggers there. I called Sarah, my paralegal friend, and shared the news. "This is huge, Lucas," she said, her voice crackling with excitement over the phone. "If she's overstayed her term, her authority's illegitimate. We can demand an emergency board election and nullify her actions, including the fence incident." She suggested filing a petition with the county to freeze HOA operations until an investigation could verify the amendment. But we needed more, proof of Marjorie's intent to deceive. Over the next few days, I became a detective. My trail camera caught Marjorie's crew repairing the park side of the fence, but not mine, leaving my property vulnerable. I documented it along with new signs on the park boundary, claiming HOA extended jurisdiction over my land. The audacity was staggering. I reached out to Ellen, my neighbor, who'd become an ally. She'd overheard Marjorie at a board meeting, boasting about acquiring my property through a legal loophole. Ellen also mentioned a rumor Marjorie was using HOA funds to pay a private consultant for property expansion plans. That consultant? Her cousin, who ran a shady real estate firm. I visited the county clerk's office again, this time requesting HOA financial records. The clerk, a no-nonsense woman named Diane, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned Willow Creek. "You're not the first to ask about them," she said, handing me a stack of ledgers, "though they've been sloppy with filings lately." Buried in the records was a $30,000 payment to Caldwell Consulting, registered to an address matching Marjorie's cousin. No invoices, no justification, just a vague note about community planning. This wasn't just overreach, it was embezzlement. Meanwhile, Marjorie escalated her tactics. A certified letter arrived accusing me of animal endangerment and threatening to report Brutus to animal control. Attached was a blurry photo of him near the fence, time-stamped during her party. The irony was rich. She'd cut the fence, let her guests trespass, and now blamed me for the fallout. I forwarded the letter to Sarah, who laughed. "She's grasping at straws. Keep Brutus secure and she's got nothing." That evening I met with a small group of residents at Ellen's house, away from Marjorie's spies. Harold was there along with a young couple, Mia and Raj, who'd been fined $500 for painting their mailbox blue. "She's turned this place into a prison," Mia said, her voice shaking. "We're with you, Lucas." We formed the Willow Creek Freedom Alliance, a quiet coalition to challenge Marjorie's rule. Our plan: gather enough resident signatures to force an emergency HOA meeting, expose the term limit violation, and demand a new election. The next morning I caught a break. My trail camera recorded a late-night visitor, Marjorie's lawyer, the same man from the earlier footage, inspecting my property line with a flashlight. He was measuring the gap in my fence, jotting notes. I sent the video to Sarah, who confirmed it could prove intent to encroach. "They're building a case to claim your land as abandoned or misused," she said. "It's a classic HOA power grab." I decided to up the ante. I posted flyers around the neighborhood, worded carefully to avoid legal trouble. "Concerned about HOA overreach? Join us for a community discussion at Willow Creek Park Saturday, 10 a.m. Bring your questions, Marjorie." He responded with a mass email, calling the meeting an unauthorized gathering and threatening fines for attendees. It backfired. Residents were furious at her heavy-handedness, and dozens RSVP'd. Saturday arrived, crisp and clear. Nearly 60 residents gathered in the park, some curious, others angry. I stood on a picnic table holding a megaphone. "This isn't about one fence," I began. "It's about our rights. Marjorie Caldwell has been president for 9 years, despite a 1998 amendment limiting her to 3. She's cut my fence, trespassed on my land, and used HOA funds for personal gain." I held up the amendment and financial records, letting the crowd murmur. Harold stepped forward, admitting he'd signed it in '98 and never saw a rescission. Mia shared her mailbox story, and others chimed in with their own grievances. Marjorie arrived halfway through, flanked by her lawyer and 2 board members. "This is slander," she shouted, her face red. "Mr. Bennett's bull is a danger, and his land is a liability. We're protecting this community." The crowd wasn't buying it. Someone yelled, "Then why'd you cut his fence?" Cheers erupted. I stayed calm, presenting the deed and trail camera footage on a portable screen. "This is my property," I said, "and this is proof Marjorie's been lying." She stormed off, but the damage was done. By Monday, we had 75 signatures, enough to petition for an emergency meeting. Sarah filed the complaint with the county, attaching the amendment, financial records, and footage. The county responded quickly, issuing a temporary injunction freezing HOA actions until an audit could be conducted. Marjorie's lawyer sent a desperate letter, offering to settle if I dropped the petition. I declined. This wasn't about money, it was about justice. Then came the bombshell. Harold, digging through old board minutes, found a 2005 memo where Marjorie's predecessor warned about future presidents overstepping bounds. It referenced a little-known clause in the original charter. Any board member could call for a vote to dissolve the HOA if gross misconduct was proven. Dissolution. The word hit like a thunderbolt. If we could prove Marjorie's fraud, we could end her empire entirely. I met with the Freedom Alliance at the park, spreading documents across a picnic table. "This is our shot," I said, "but we need airtight evidence." Mia had a contact at the state auditor's office, who agreed to review the financials. Raj, a tech whiz, hacked into the HOA's public Wi-Fi, legally he assured us, and found deleted emails between Marjorie and her cousin discussing land acquisition profits. We were building a case, but Marjorie wasn't done. On Wednesday, Animal Control showed up, citing an anonymous tip about a dangerous bull. I walked them to Brutus's pasture, where he was calmly grazing. "This guy's a teddy bear unless you trespass," I said, showing my veterinary license and Brutus's training records. The officer, a gruff man named Carl, laughed. "Sounds like someone's got a vendetta. Your bull's fine." He left, but not before hinting that Marjorie's name had come up in other complaints. By Friday, the community was electric with rumors. Marjorie's allies were distancing themselves, and board members were resigning, citing personal reasons. I got a call from Clara at the Historical Society, who'd found a 1970s land survey showing my property was zoned for agricultural use, exempting it from HOA oversight entirely. Another nail in Marjorie's coffin. As the sun set, I stood by Brutus's pasture, watching him chew cud under the golden light. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Auditor's report is in. You won't believe what they found." My heart raced. We were close, so close to ending this. But Marjorie was a cornered animal, and I knew she'd strike back. What she didn't know was that I'd found her Achilles' heel, and it was about to change everything. The golden light of late afternoon bathed my Willow Creek property as I stood by Brutus's pasture, my phone buzzing with Sarah's text. "Auditors. Report is in. You won't believe what they found." My heart thumped like a drum. I'm Lucas Bennett, a 38-year-old veterinarian who'd bought this land for a fresh start, only to find myself locked in battle with Marjorie Caldwell, the HOA president, who'd cut my fence to throw a party on my property. Her audacity had unleashed Brutus, my 2,000-pound trained bull, turning her gala into a viral disaster. Now, with the Willow Creek Freedom Alliance behind me, a 1998 amendment limiting her presidency, and evidence of her financial schemes, we were on the verge of toppling her empire. But Marjorie wasn't done fighting, and I was about to uncover the final piece that would seal her fate. I drove to Sarah's office, a small storefront downtown, where she was waiting with a thick manila folder. The state auditor dug deep, she said, sliding it across her desk. Marjorie's been siphoning HOA funds for years, not just to her cousin's consulting firm, but to a network of shell companies tied to her family. Over $150,000 in the last 5 years, disguised as community improvements. Your land was her big play. She planned to annex it for a fake heritage park to secure a $500,000 grant. My jaw dropped. The auditor's report detailed payments to non-existent vendors, inflated invoices and transfers to offshore accounts. It was fraud on a scale I hadn't imagined. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. There's more. The auditor found a 2005 HOA resolution requiring all major financial decisions to be approved by a 2/3 resident vote. Marjorie's been bypassing it, claiming emergency powers. Combined with the 1998 term limit violation, this could dissolve the HOA entirely. I remembered the 2005 memo Harold had found, warning about presidential overreach. My father's advice, walk the line yourself, felt like a guiding star. We had Marjorie cornered, but I knew she'd strike back before we could file. That evening, I gathered the Freedom Alliance at Ellen's house, the air thick with anticipation. Harold, Mia, Raj, and a dozen other residents crowded around her dining table, poring over the auditor's report. Raj had uncovered more deleted emails from Marjorie's cousin, outlining a plan to pressure me into selling my land by escalating fines and legal threats. Mia's contact at the State Preservation Office confirmed Marjorie's Heritage Park application was fraudulent. No historical significance existed for my property or the park. She's been forging documents to make it look legit, Mia said, holding up a fake surveyor's report with my land mislabeled as HOA property. Our plan was clear. Present the evidence at the emergency HOA meeting we'd forced with 75 signatures, demand Marjorie's resignation, and petition the county to dissolve the HOA for illegal operations. But we needed one more piece, a public confrontation to rally the community. I proposed a bold move, a town hall at the community center, live-streamed, on the local forum where we'd lay out every violation. Marjorie thrives on secrecy, I said. Let's drag her into the light. The group agreed and we set the date for Saturday, giving us 3 days to prepare. Marjorie didn't waste time. The next morning I woke to a sheriff's deputy at my door, serving a restraining order barring me from interfering with HOA activities or approaching Marjorie. The complaint cited aggressive behavior and animal endangerment from Brutus's appearance at her party. I showed the deputy my deed, trail camera footage, and Brutus's training records. She cut my fence, officer, I said. This is retaliation. He nodded, unimpressed by Marjorie's theatrics. This looks like a civil matter. Stay out of trouble and you'll be fine. As he left, I noticed a new sign on the park boundary. Future Heritage Park, private. Property. Marjorie was doubling down, claiming my land as hers. I called Sarah, who laughed off the restraining order. It's a scare tactic. She's panicking. She filed a counter-motion to dismiss, citing Marjorie's illegal trespassing. Meanwhile, Raj hacked into the HOA's public newsletter archives. Again, legally, he swore, finding a 2017 announcement where Marjorie claimed the board had unanimously extended her term. Harold confirmed it was a lie. No vote had occurred. We added it to our dossier, along with Clara's 1970 survey proving my land's agricultural zoning. By Friday, the community was a tinderbox. Marjorie sent a mass email accusing me of sabotaging Willow Creek's future and urging residents to boycott our town hall. She announced a rival community unity event at the same time, offering free food and entertainment. It was a desperate ploy, but it split the neighborhood. Some residents loyal to her or afraid of her influence planned to attend her event. Others, fed up with her rules, RSVP'd to ours. Ellen reported that Marjorie had hired private security to monitor the community center, likely to intimidate our supporters. I spent the day preparing, designing a presentation with clear visuals, timelines of Marjorie's violations, financial records and footage of her trespassing. Mia printed flyers, and Raj set up the live stream. Harold reached out to a local reporter, who agreed to cover the town hall. "This is bigger than Willow Creek," she said. "HOA fraud's a hot topic." As the sun set, I checked on Brutus, his massive form calm in the pasture. "You started this, big guy," I said, patting his flank. "Let's finish it." Saturday morning dawned bright and crisp, the community center buzzing with nervous energy. Over 100 residents filled the room, some clutching our flyers, others whispering about Marjorie's event across the street. Marjorie's security guard stood at the back, arms crossed, but they couldn't stop the crowd's growing curiosity. I took the stage, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Thank you for coming," I began. "This isn't about one fence or one bull. It's about our rights as homeowners, our freedom to live without fear of overreach." I walked the crowd through the evidence, the 1998 term limit amendment, the auditor's report, the forged documents, and the fraudulent grant application. Gasps rippled through the room as I showed the trail camera footage of Marjorie measuring my property line. Harold spoke next, his voice shaking but resolute. "I signed that amendment in '98. Marjorie lied about its rescission to stay in power." Mia shared her mailbox fine story, and Ellen recounted Marjorie's bullying over the years. The live stream chat exploded with comments. Residents from other neighborhoods shared similar HOA horror stories. Halfway through, Marjorie burst in, flanked by her lawyer and a security guard. "This is an illegal gathering," she shouted. Her face flushed. "You're spreading lies to undermine our community." The crowd booed, but I raised a hand for calm. "Ms. Caldwell, you're welcome to respond, but the evidence speaks for itself." I played a clip of her cousin's email, detailing the land grab. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but she pushed him aside. "You let a dangerous animal loose," she spat. "You're the threat here." A resident stood up, holding her phone. "I was at your party, Marjorie. You cut his fence. I saw the saw marks." Others nodded, murmuring agreement. Marjorie's composure cracked, her eyes darting to the exit. I seized the moment, holding up the 2005 memo. "This warns against presidential overreach. It allows any board member to call for dissolution if misconduct is proven. Harold, as a board member, are you ready?" Harold stood, his voice firm. "I move to dissolve the Willow Creek HOA for gross misconduct and fraud." The room erupted in cheers. Marjorie screamed, "You can't do this," but her lawyer pulled her toward the door, whispering about legal exposure. The security guards hesitated, then followed her out. We took a vote. 82 residents, more than two-thirds, supported dissolution. Sarah filed the motion on the spot, live-streamed for transparency. The reporter scribbled furiously, her eyes wide. By Monday, the county court issued an emergency injunction, halting all HOA operations pending a full investigation. The state auditor expanded its probe, freezing Marjorie's accounts linked to the shell companies. The Preservation Office rejected her grant application, citing credible evidence of fraud. Marjorie's lawyer sent a final, desperate offer: $50,000 to drop the case and sign an NDA. I tore it up. This wasn't about money. It was about justice. Over the next week, the neighborhood transformed. Residents painted their houses in long-forbidden colors, planted unapproved flowers, and hosted impromptu barbecues. The Heritage Park signs vanished, and I rebuilt my fence, stronger than before. Brutus grazed peacefully, unaware of his starring role. The reporter's article went viral, sparking a statewide push for HOA reform. Marjorie faced criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, her bail hearing scheduled for the following month. I stood on my porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange. Ellen walked over holding a homemade pie. "You did it, Lucas," she said. "We're free." I smiled, thinking of my father. I'd walked the line, and it led to something bigger, a community reborn. My dream home was mine again. But more importantly, Willow Creek was no longer Marjorie's kingdom. As Brutus snorted in the distance, I knew we'd won more than a battle. We'd reclaimed our freedom, one fence post at a time.